Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being here. I'm going to make the presentation on Colombia. Let me go with the first slide real quickly. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let's see, we got the...
Page down.
Here we go. The free trade agreement between the U.S. and Colombia in effect since 2011. Colombia is the third largest economy in Central America and South America. The U.S. and Colombia are excellent trading partners. They've been in trading back and forth for many years. And some of the commodities in demand use are new and used equipment, mining, oil, construction equipment, agriculture, medical, information, technology, transportation services, and many more. Made in the U.S., a product branding, they're highly desirable by Colombia. Colombia consumers like American products, and that's a good thing. They have a very high reputation for quality and value, and now with the FTA, things make the whole process a lot more transparent. Import opportunities to the U.S. are plentiful with a variety of commodities, leather goods, handicraft, coal. When I said coal, I said charcoal for grills, barbecuing, those kind of things, that kind of commodity. Gold, I have seen interest in importing gold, I guess since the price of gold has gone up so much. Fresh fruits, shoes, wearing apparels, auto parts, tropical fish, flowers, fruit, pulp, coffee, and just to name a few of the products that are exported from Colombia into the U.S. On the logistic infrastructure, the highlights and the challenges, transportation from the interior to the ports in and out can be challenging and expensive by our standards here, and slow in comparison to our U.S. also. Major airports in the interior are seeing challenges in exportations out of Colombia on air freight, people using commercial airlines because some restrictions around airports. Some of the airports are mountainous and high altitude, and that tends to restrict the weight on the aircraft for takeoff. So I think some importation being delayed because of that. Ocean ports are located on both sides of the Panama Canal, giving importers and exporters time and flexibility and reduced costs if you don't have to cross the canal. Tips for doing business in Colombia. The U.S. Department of Commerce, Commercial Service, they have excellent opportunities, excellent programs, and excellent support staff. Important to follow business and cultural protocols. In Colombia, just like it is everywhere else, every country has their own protocols of how to do business, and that's important to do that, to make sure that those things are followed. The regulatory process is streamlined and more transparent since the FTA. And the good thing about it, I recommend people who want to do business internationally to try to deal with countries whenever possible and with FTAs, because you have a level playing field, number one. And number two, you have a mechanism to resolve any kind of dispute that you may have under the free trade agreement. There's some rules and of engagements that makes the process a lot easier and more predictable than when you deal with, I'm not saying not to deal with other countries, but I'm saying that the FTA, especially for new people who are getting into the business that are not well versed in international trade, that offer them some safety nets there. Duties on most products are reduced, and mostly they will be eliminated within the next 10 years, so that's a good thing. And mainly, products from the U.S. Used to be enterable with duty, and now they're pretty much reduced to duty-free, so they're giving our products a competitive edge. trade fair participation is a good source of contacts and information. I put there FENALCO, it's an organization in Colombia that for businesses, and they're very supportive, people doing investment there or buying products or selling products. There's American Chambers of Commerce all over, and mainly in South America, and they're very supportive of people doing business in those countries, whichever the case may be. And the Colombian American Chamber of Commerce, they're usually, most cities, we have one here, most cities have their own chambers, and they're very supportive to do business there. The Southeast offers great trade opportunity for Colombia. The Port of Savannah, the Port of Charleston, and Hartsfield-Jackson Airport offers convenience venues for goods in and out. Colombia is the 24th largest export market. The FTA has provided commodities from Georgia and Colombia preferential duty treatment. Colombia initially has preferential duty treatment under APTEA. That was before. Colombian products come into this country for the most part at the reduced duty or duty-free. The trade playing field is now more transparent since U.S. goods also enjoy the same special treatment, giving them a competitive advantage, as I mentioned before. And this is my contact information, and I just want to make a correction on the program. It shows me as MBM. I'm an independent guy operating here in Atlanta. Thank you very much.
Hector, thank you so much. All right, Sweden. We've got two left. These countries are not up here in order of importance by any means, so it was a random doing. What Georgia exports with Sweden have slightly decreased. When you take a look at the 50 states that sell products to Sweden, Georgia ranked 6th last year in exports, 15th in imports. We've got nearly 9,000 Georgians employed because of Swedish companies. Some of those include Ericsson, H&M, Volvo, Bluebird, IKEA. Lots of good information here. Here to talk about Sweden is Gary Bruce, chairman of the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce in Atlanta and managing director of Partner Tech, which is a subsidiary of a Swedish company, right? Welcome, Gary.
Tech. My name's Gary Bruce, as said, and if you look at me and you listen for a minute, you'll find out I don't sound very Swedish. Actually, my German colleague over there would probably represent what most of you think Swedish is. So, you know, I can lean on you for a little bit. But thank you for letting us here. I want to especially thank Paige and Kathy and let them know officially when I was in Stockholm last week at the American Embassy and then met with the American Chamber, and the state of Georgia is well known, very well known. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about a couple things that just to give you an idea of Sweden and specifically around logistics, how you might be able to find opportunities for yourselves and your businesses to help as we grow Swedish companies in here and potentially doing work back in the other side of the country. So, Sweden and the United States, David and Goliath. That's what often the Swedes think. You know, the Swedes, look at that. You know, they have 9 million people and we have 315 million people. It's pretty big. But they are very, very involved in our country. Jonas Hallström is the ambassador to the United States. He's serving his 6th year. He's helped form with our Congress a Swedish caucus, and we have a representative from the state of Georgia who is a member. The Swedish companies that are represented in America are major employers with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs. It is an interesting nation. You can see that it is big in its area of innovation, and that is what's made it to grow for such a small country. It is one of the only 5 countries in the world that actually produces a fighter jet. Interestingly enough, it gets knocked by sometimes in the business community because it's a socialistic country. It is very socialistic, but I'll have you know this, it is very entrepreneurial and growing. And last year, Sweden once again reduced its taxes to businesses and individuals. So it kind of goes against the grain of thought that we have in doing that. 80% of the population speaks English, And most of the population speaks multiple languages. So it's a pretty comfortable place to go. The Economist magazine just recently did an article on Sweden and the whole Scandinavian countries. And and we are some represented here as actually that we should be looking at that. They are very strong, they're very well established, their finances are good. Certainly Sweden has been a member of the euro and has suffered in the early 90s a bank crisis that we had some time ago and has established themselves and grown from that. You know, the Netherlands has done a good job in that area, and also we have Germany here, which is actually supporting Europe. So, and do that along with their colleagues from the French. I think they would nod yes. They can't say that, but that's about true. That's true. So, how can this is the key to what I'm going to talk about for logistics. If you want to help, if you want to find opportunity with Sweden, it's growing here. There's tons of companies in Sweden trying to come here, but it's a small country and they're looking. So, in the area of logistics, we always talk about postponement manufacturing. That's where, if you talk to Adam and his company excels at, how do we bring things from around the world to here? But this is something new in that I'm going to challenge everybody with, an innovative way of thinking. It's actually an old way, but it's a new way that's come up. This challenges us to think about how do we get product here, and which way do we get it here economically, and the ways that you all can participate. If you look, you'll see that many of you probably have read the articles by Boston Consulting Group about the reshoring of manufacturing back to the United States. And certainly I would imagine that the majority of the people here know that GE just repurposed back $800 million worth of manufacturing of white goods. In this article here, you can see that it's growing and it's coming back. And the key to this, the absolute key to this, is logistics. How do you bring things back? How do you do that? How do we compete with other countries where an American wage is slightly higher than that of a Chinese wage? And it's logistics and how we do that. One of the way that's done, and you can see this, and this is where it creates opportunities for those of you directly in logistics, those of you who support logistics, and those of you who are dealing with customs and helping people move into the United States. A postponement manufacturing example and a simple supply chain one you can see there. That often to get something out of an office here and get something into Atlanta, which is the place to have things shipped to in the United States, since we can get to everywhere in 2 hours or 2 days, pretty much. Best port we have going on in the country. I'm a little pro Georgia here and do that. But you can see if we bring in things from Asia, from Eastern Europe, bring them in here from Mexico, and then combine them with manufacturing that can be done in the United States, we can often reduce the total cost of a manufactured product. That's what GE found out. And as Kathy said, I'm managing director of a manufacturing plant that's Swedish owned here in America. And on many of the products we do, we can outperform and we can price at the same or lower price than those products being built in Asia or in Poland or Romania or any other Eastern country. We've continued to prove that by growing, in the last 2 years, we've added 200 new jobs to do that, and so it speaks for itself. There's a lot of opportunity for you all to learn this and understand this and help many of the European companies that come through. I brought in a challenge here that I'll let you read if anybody's interested, and a solution that was done, how we helped using this kind of methodology and using supply chain experts such as the folks down there with UPS to help us solve this, is to get how we actually helped a Swedish company grow immensely and meet many different challenges they have. So with that, I wanted to give you this thought. Doing tips with Sweden. First of all, I think everybody said here, the best thing you could do when you walk away and remember this is just go and find one of the chambers and ask somebody if you're really going to do that. It's a lot to know. I will tell you, typically as an American, when I first started doing business in Europe, I had to learn that everybody didn't do business the American way. That took me a long time, I think, but you do need to learn, and there are different things. My favorite that I always talk about with Swedes is just the You know, in America, if I'm getting that, I'm going, they're buying in. They're buying in. Over there, I'm getting, all that means is I hear your mouth, you know, I hear the words, I hear the words. Doesn't mean anything else other than that. But there's a lot of little tricks of the trade when you go in. So please look up everybody here. Reach out to the embassies. They are more than helpful. The trade commissions are, and will do that. And they will just help you go. My last and my final thing, Transatlantic Fair Trade Agreement. Support it. The president, both sides of the House are trying to do it. A 2-year initiative. Georgia will play a part in that because we're a big agricultural state. That's probably the biggest challenge, is dealing with the agricultural products and fair trade. So please keep that in mind. Pay attention to that as it affects not only you as an American, but you as a Georgian, and we go forward. And with that, I'll teach everybody a little bit of Swedish. The easiest way to say thank you is tack. And if you really, really are impressed with somebody, you can say tack så mycket. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. That was wonderful. All right, last but certainly not least, we have a presentation from Israel. You think Israel, sometimes you think a little bit of a small market because it's a little bit smaller than the state of Georgia. But I have to tell you, when you look at how quickly this country is growing, their GDP is almost triple what we have going on in our state with our GSP. So they're growing about 4.8%. You look back to Israel, and if we had more time, I would ask folks, what is the oldest free trade agreement the U.S. has? Most times people guess NAFTA because they think NAFTA is the oldest, but the free trade agreement goes back to 1985. When I look at the stats, the furthest back I can run stats is 97, but historically we're growing an average of about 7% per year with our exports to Israel, so it's a very important market. With that, I was really pleased to have to you our international visitor traveled from Israel, Don Frohlinger, Chief Operating Officer for the Israeli Ports. So please, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'll start by teaching a word in Hebrew after we heard the Swedish. Shalom y'all. I hope I got the y'all correct. We heard a couple of people arguing over which is the largest or the smallest country here on the panel, and I'm convinced I'm last because we think that Israel is actually the smallest country represented over here. 7 Israels fit into Georgia, and our population is approximately the same as the population as metropolitan Atlanta. So we're a very small country. In fact, I like to say that we also have another problem. We don't have any natural resources in our country up to the recent discovery of natural gas off our coast. The only natural resources we had were minerals and sand, rock, and 8 months of straight sunshine. Due to our geopolitical situation, our economy is virtually an island economy since there's very marginal inter-regional trade. It would appear that we have nothing going for us. Nevertheless, our economy and international trade has flourished over the last decade with annual GDP growth approaching 5%. While there will be a slowing this year, we expect that this will continue into the future. Our GDP growth has consistently exceeded both European and American results, even during the economic downturn at the end of the last decade. As I mentioned earlier, we have no natural resources and no adjacent market that can help us generate growth. Our growth is powered entirely by our only true resource, our human capital. Due to our size, lack of natural resources, and unstable regional neighborhood, which requires that we dedicate a substantial resource to security, we lead the world in numerous per capita benchmarks, such as home computer penetration per capita, university graduates in the workforce per capita, scientific papers published, R&D investments, patents, and technical papers as examples. We have the largest number of startups per capita in the world, and the largest number of NASDAQ foreign-listed companies after Canada. The high-tech industry research centers in Israel have been responsible for the development of the chips in your PC, the software that runs your computers, the technology that creates the platforms, that created the platform for mobile phones, voice over internet, chat, and flash drive. So if you want cheese and wine, you go to France. If you want mechanical engineering, you go to Germany. If you want technology, you come to Israel. We've also been successful in applying our technological strength to the logistics industry, facilitating the transformation of this traditional low-tech industry into high-tech. For example, our company, which is the National Port Authority, has developed one of the world's most advanced trade systems. Prior to the introduction of the system, the logistics community, the importers and exporters, customs agents, freight forwarders, shipping, trucking, rail, customs, banks, invested many hours in preparing documentation, shuffling the documentation between parties, waiting for processing, carrying out payments between all of the different logistics players, as you see in this slide. Today, all of this paperwork moves as electronic messages via a web-based system that is totally paperless, accessible 24/7, reliable, seamless, secure, and communicates flawlessly between the players who continue to maintain their own legacy systems while using our platform. 100% of all of our trade moves this way through this platform. Our system substantially reduces clerical errors, paper and fuel waste, physical record keeping, and most importantly, conserves precious time and assures delivery and confirmation of required documentation so that cargo flows move smoothly through the logistics chain. All of this with the added bonus of improving environmental sustainability of the logistics supply chain. While our colleague in South Korea are catching up to us, no other country in the world has been able to engage its whole logistics industry to use one single uniform platform. Israeli technology has also been applied to logistics security applications, operations, monitoring and control systems. Opportunities abound to partnership with Israeli companies involved in logistics technology, some of which are participating here in this conference. The partnerships can capitalize both on our R&D capabilities, just as Intel and Microsoft and HP have done in the past, as well as proven solutions and applications that have been brought to the market already. We still have our own challenges to meet. As a result of our island economy, 99% of our foreign trade moves via our ports. 65% of our GDP is trade-related. Our exports account for 40% of our GDP. Our economy is therefore dependent on our ports and our government-owned operators who maintain a duopoly with limited competition, which does not encourage the efficiencies we would like to see. With limited capacity at our existing port facilities, we are planning new container terminals that have been designed to be operated by independent operators, thus encouraging competition and the realization of efficiencies. Our rough neighborhood requires out-of-the-box thinking to secure our logistics chain. A good deal of our trade moves through challenging neighborhoods that pose a potential threat to the smooth flow of commerce and trade. The results of the Arab Spring in Egypt, for example, have raised concerns about the stability and the reliability of the Suez Canal route. Riots and disturbances during recent weeks have interrupted logistic activity in the canal area. To facilitate our own Far East trade, we've begun to look forward with the design of a railway connection linking the Red Sea to the Mediterranean and parallel to the Suez Canal. I've been to China with our transport minister twice over the last year to discuss this plan. There's extreme interest on the part of the Chinese to participate in this connection. We believe they recognize the need for Plan B for their exports to Europe if there are severe disruptions to the Suez Canal. However, the truth is that Eilat port on the Red Sea has very limited capacity, and it's not possible to significantly expand that capacity. So we've begun to consider the possibility of constructing a canal port in Eilat to build approximately 2.5 miles inland from the coastline. Such a port could potentially provide the capacity to expand all of our Far East traffic and create excess capacity that could be capitalized together with the railway project to connect the Med and the Red Seas. I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this conference, and I look forward to discuss some of the issues that I raised here today off record after the session. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard 8 countries in a global view, and if you notice, we have time for a little bit of Q&A, just a couple of minutes. I am so impressed. I want to thank each one of the speakers for making that possible. If you do public speaking, you know short presentations take a whole lot longer to prepare than a long presentation because you have to be concise. So join me in saying thank you to this incredible panel of speakers. All right, we have a couple of roving microphones, so if you have questions, if you'll raise your hands, we've got one down front. Ani, you want to kick us off?
Kathy, hello. Yeah, Kathy, Ani Agnihotri from USA India Business Summit. You started this excellent panel with saying that largest trade, we are doing it with Asia. Is there any particular reason that we are missing China, Japan, and India from this panel?
Now, honestly, the opportunities for selecting of countries in here had to do with, the list was much longer than we had spots, let me say, and I think Paige and his staff did an incredible job with the staff we have, but it is not an indication of lack of interest or lack of value with the countries that are there. There's always next year. This year was our first time to take a look at those particular countries, and so there's next year to expand it to other markets, but no, not an indication at all. Trevor.
Trevor Williams with Global Atlanta. The question's for Mr. Feinberg. I was wondering, obviously UPS is pro EU-US free trade agreement, but I was wondering if you could discuss the likelihood of that happening and what some of the sticking points might be.
If I knew the answer to that, I'd really have something. There hasn't been a lot of progress up until recently when President Obama mentioned it in his State of the Union address. And now there's a groundswell of activity and excitement about it. So I think it's much more likely now, since that's happened, and with both economies struggling, plus the concern about the power and the growth of the Chinese economy, I think the equation is right, and it would be more likely that something could happen than before this excitement and before it was mentioned in the State of the Union address.
Other questions? We've got time for one or two more, especially since those were short. Any in the back of the room? I know we've hit the front of the room. No? All right, well, let me throw out just a couple of questions. With Israel, I know that you were talking about the technology that's here and how technology has made a difference. What do you think is the secret that's been behind that technology?
I think that there are a number of cultural issues in Israel that have led us to this. First of all, we've had to excel in technology for military applications, and that's spilled over to the civilian side. We've learned in our culture, there's a lot of teamwork that gets done there. People don't work as individuals, they work as teams, and they challenge each other. We have a culture whereby subordinates challenge the superiors. When you go to the Army, after every single operation, the unit is called together, and the privates can come out and challenge what the lieutenant or captain decided in terms of the way the operation was carried out. And so we have this culture of challenging and thinking out of the box, and I think this is what's helped us create the technology industry that we have today.
Perfect. All right, one question for Lucia, since I cut her off on her presentation. You mentioned the complexities of the taxation in Brazil. You mentioned complexities within the market. If you had to give a short summary of advice on the best way to enter that market for somebody who is not currently in Brazil, what would that advice be?
I think there are many ways. When you look at a company, a very large company, how do they go about to enter the Brazilian market is much easier because they have offices, operations in Brazil that they can just expand. When you don't have that presence in Brazil yet, one of the ways that we advise folks is to look at companies that you can partner with, companies that can help you enter the Brazilian market by a joint venture or an acquisition. And lastly, for a very small company, I advise you to take part of one of the Georgia Department of Economic Development trade shows that takes you to Brazil and give you a taste of what the Brazilian market is all about.
Very, very kind. All right, with that, we are right exactly on time. We go from here into a break. let me encourage you, I know we did not get to talk to everybody, but these folks will be here during the break. Let me encourage you to network individually with them, ask more questions, and once again, to thank our panelists for this incredibly excellent job and all the work that they have done.